I had always been careful. Careful with my words, careful with my actions, careful with people. Life had taught me that obedience and caution kept me safe. I liked to blend into the background, to follow the rules, to avoid conflict. I never thought I would meet someone who could make my carefully constructed world wobble. His name was Rin. I first noticed him in the crowded cafe near my university. He had that kind of presence that didn't need a spotlight to command attention. Even from across the room, I could feel him, like a low hum in the air that made your skin prickle without knowing why. He was tall, lean, and impeccably dressed, the kind of style that suggested confidence without trying too hard. But it wasn't just the way he looked, it was the way he moved, the way he carried himself, that magnetic pull that made people instinctively pay attention. I tried to ignore him, of course. I told myself I had enough to focus on, enough to worry about without adding someone like him into the mix. But fate, or whatever strange force governs these things, had other plans. I spilled my coffee. Not a little drip, but a full, shame-inducing splash across my notebook and the edge of my bag. My heart leapt into my throat, and I crouched to dab at the mess with trembling hands, muttering apologies to myself for my own clumsiness. Need a hand? I froze. That voice. Smooth, low, confident, with a hint of amusement. I looked up and found myself staring into the sharp, penetrating eyes of Ren. His gaze was unnerving in a way that made it impossible to look away. He leaned slightly forward, his expression unreadable but clearly interested in me. I'm fine, I stammered, feeling heat creep up my neck. My usual calm had fled, replaced by nervous energy that made my hands shake. Ren's lips curved into a faint smile, almost teasing, almost predatory. You sure? You look like you could use some help. I wanted to decline, to retreat into my safe little bubble, but something about the way he spoke made me hesitate. His presence was like a magnet, and I was that stubborn piece of metal that didn't know whether to resist or give in. I guess I could use a napkin, I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. He handed me one, but the way he did it, it wasn't just casual kindness. His fingers brushed mine, just briefly, but enough to send a strange shiver down my spine. My heart thudded in a rhythm that felt too fast, too loud. I couldn't explain why, and I hated that I noticed it. Rin leaned back, studying me now with that piercing gaze. You're Kaito, right? His tone wasn't a question. It was a statement, confident, as if he already knew everything about me. I nodded, trying to hide the way my pulse spiked. How did you? I've seen you around. You're the quiet one in the library. Always alone, always polite, he said, tilting his head slightly. I like that. I blinked. That was unexpected. Most people ignored me entirely. The attention should have felt flattering, but instead, it made my chest tighten. Something about the way he said it, the way he said I like that, made my stomach twist with a mix of fear and curiosity. I'm not unusual, I muttered, suddenly self-conscious. Rin chuckled, a low, smooth sound that seemed to echo in my mind. You think you're not unusual, but that's exactly what makes you stand out. He paused, leaning forward slightly, his eyes locking onto mine. You're too careful. Too obedient. That can be dangerous, you know. Dangerous. The word hit me like a spark. I wanted to argue, to deny it, to retreat into safety, but I couldn't. He had a way of saying things that bypassed the usual walls I built around myself. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely controlled. Ren's smile deepened, teasing, almost cruel. You play by the rules, always. But some rules are meant to be broken. Sometimes you need to be pushed. My stomach dropped, and a strange thrill ran through me. I didn't want to admit it, but part of me wanted to see how far he could push me. I had no idea why. Fear mixed with curiosity, and the combination was intoxicating in a way I had never felt before. I don't know if I started, my words tripping over each other. Ren leaned closer, lowering his voice just slightly, his lips near my ear. Don't think. Just feel. That's how you'll know. The contact, the closeness, the intensity, it was overwhelming. I wanted to pull back, but I couldn't. It was like my body recognized something my mind didn't yet understand. I felt a tension coil inside me, tight and electric. My mind screamed caution, but my body was betraying me, responding to him in ways I didn't want to admit. He straightened suddenly, breaking the tension with a sharp, calculated smile. Careful, Kaito. Curiosity can be dangerous. I swallowed hard, trying to regain control of my racing heart. I'm not. Ren's voice cut through my protest, calm and deliberate. You are. You're curious. That's why you can't resist looking at me now, even though you're telling yourself you should. I felt like he had read my thoughts. It was unnerving and thrilling all at once. I looked away embarrassed, but couldn't stop noticing the way he carried himself, the way he seemed to command not just attention but desire. The bell of my laptop went off, signaling the end of my study session. I gathered my things quickly, fumbling nervously. Ren stood and offered me a hand, which I hesitated over before accepting. The touch sent another unexpected jolt through me, a warning and an invitation all at once. See you around, Kaito, he said smoothly, his eyes locking onto mine with that unrelenting intensity. I have a feeling we're not done yet. I nodded mutely, heart hammering in my chest. As I walked away, I couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way he made me feel nervous, excited, terrified, and oddly alive. For the first time in a long while, I realized that my careful world, the one I thought was safe and predictable, had been cracked open by someone I barely knew. And even though a part of me wanted to run, another part, a darker, unacknowledged part, wanted to see exactly how far he would push me. I had no idea what I was getting into, but something told me that meeting Ren was just the beginning of a storm I wouldn't be able to resist. I couldn't stop thinking about him. That name had lodged itself somewhere deep inside my mind, like a constant pulse I couldn't ignore. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the sharp, confident tilt of his jaw, the piercing intensity of his gaze. It wasn't just admiration, I knew it was something more complicated, something dangerous. And yet, part of me craved it. It started innocently enough. He approached me one afternoon in the quiet corner of the library, where I usually studied alone. His presence was like a shadow, calm but impossible to ignore. Kaito, he said softly, leaning against the edge of the table, his eyes sweeping over my books as if he had every right to be there. You're always so serious. Don't you ever relax? I swallowed hard, my hands tightening around my pen. I need to study, I murmured, keeping my eyes on the page. My voice sounded small, timid even to me. He smiled, but it wasn't a gentle smile. It was deliberate, teasing, and it carried an edge that made my stomach twist. Relaxation isn't about books or rules. It's about letting go. Letting someone take control for a moment. I froze. My mind recoiled at the suggestion. Let someone take control? That was the last thing I would ever allow myself to do. And yet, I couldn't look away from him. My curiosity, the part of me I usually suppressed, stirred to life. I don't think I started, but he interrupted with a soft laugh. Of course you don't think you can, he said, leaning closer. The air around him felt heavy, charged. That's why it's exciting. I could feel my pulse in my throat, a rapid, uneven rhythm that betrayed me. I tried to pull my attention back to my notebook, but my hands were shaking. I could feel it, an unexplainable tension that ran from my chest down into my limbs. My body was reacting before my mind could catch up. You're trembling, he noted, his voice low, almost hypnotic. Nervous, I suppose. Or is it anticipation? I tried to answer, tried to argue, but my throat was suddenly dry. I could only look at him, wide-eyed, as a shiver ran down my spine. Why does this feel strange? I whispered to myself, my mind spinning. Strange, but thrilling, scary, and yet undeniably exciting. Ren crouched slightly to meet my eyes, his expression unreadable but commanding. Because I'm pushing you, he said. I'm testing your limits. I want to see how far you'll go before you break. But don't worry. I'll watch over you. Carefully. Carefully. That word lingered in my mind, confusing me. His dominance wasn't reckless. It was deliberate, calculated, and somehow safe. Even in the moments that scared me, there was a strange sense of trust that forced itself into the corners of my panic. "Test limits?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Yes," he replied, tilting his head, watching me with that unsettling intensity. "You'll resist at first, of course. It's natural. But resistance is part of the thrill. The part that makes surrender so irresistible." I swallowed hard, a nervous laugh escaping me. Irresistible? The words sounded foreign on my lips, almost wrong, but I couldn't stop the way it resonated inside me. I wanted to deny it, wanted to step back and pretend I was unaffected, but my body wasn't cooperating. My skin felt alive, sensitive to every small movement he made. Ren leaned even closer, his hand brushing lightly against my arm. The contact was fleeting, almost insignificant, but the jolt it sent through me was anything but. My stomach tightened, my chest felt like it was being squeezed, and an odd heat pooled deep inside me. "See," he murmured, his lips near my ear. "Your body knows before your mind does." I jerked slightly, startled by the closeness, but I didn't move away. I wanted to, but a part of me, an unacknowledged, thrilling part, was frozen, captivated by him. Over the next few days, Ren's attention became more deliberate. He found small ways to push me, to test my reactions without overstepping. A hand on my shoulder that lingered a second too long, a whisper in my ear as we passed in the hallway, a gaze that pinned me in place. Every encounter was a subtle challenge, and every time, I found myself torn between resisting and yielding. One afternoon, he cornered me in the music room, alone with the soft echo of piano keys from a practice session down the hall. He leaned against the edge of the piano, watching me as I fumbled with my backpack. "You're tense," he observed, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Let me help." I froze, my hands stilling. "I don't need." "Sure," he interrupted softly, stepping closer. His hand lightly pressed against my wrist, guiding it in a gentle, firm motion. "Relax. Trust me for just a moment." I wanted to resist. I wanted to pull back, to escape. And yet, the warmth of his hand, the commanding calm in his voice, made me hesitate. My heart pounded, each beat screaming caution while another part of me whispered temptation. Ren's gaze softened slightly, though his dominance didn't fade. It's okay to feel conflicted. That's part of the experience. Pain, pleasure, they're often closer than you think. A little discomfort can reveal so much about yourself. Pleasure. The words echoed in my mind, confusing and thrilling all at once. I shivered, a mix of fear and curiosity racking my body. My own desires, ones I had never dared to name, began surfacing in small, undeniable ways. What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. Rin smiled, a knowing, deliberate curve of his lips. "Not what I want, Kaito. What you want. You're just afraid to admit it, even to yourself." The honesty in his words hit me harder than any physical touch. My chest felt tight, my breath uneven. He wasn't forcing me outright, yet. He was showing me the line, nudging me toward it, letting me choose whether to step over or pull back. And that choice, that freedom to resist or submit, made the tension unbearable and intoxicating. I realized then that my mind and body were betraying me, responding to his dominance even as I struggled with fear. The thrill of anticipation, the delicate mix of discomfort and excitement, it was new, frightening, and addictive all at once. For the first time, I understood the strange, heady appeal of surrender. Not complete surrender, not yet, but the possibility of it. The tension of resisting someone who could push me, test me, challenge me, yet care enough not to break me completely. That balance made my pulse race, my thoughts scatter, and a flush creep over my skin. Ren's hand lingered a moment longer on mine, firm but gentle. "We'll take it slow," he said softly. "I want you to learn to enjoy this, carefully. Step by step." I nodded, though my mind was spinning. "Step by step," I echoed, tasting the words. They felt strange yet exhilarating. As I walked away that day, my body still tingling from his touch, my mind replayed every moment. Fear, curiosity, thrill, confusion, they all mingled in an overwhelming tangle. And beneath it all, a dangerous thought kept whispering, I want more. I want to see how far he'll push me. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I knew one thing for certain. My careful, obedient life had been irrevocably shaken. And I couldn't resist following the pull of the storm Ren had started. I couldn't deny it any longer. The truth had begun to settle in my chest like a slow, steady drumbeat I couldn't ignore. I craved him. Not just his presence, but the way he made me feel, on edge, trembling, alive in ways I had never imagined. I used to think I could control everything about myself, but Ren was slowly proving that some things were meant to be surrendered. It started the evening he invited me to his apartment under the pretense of helping me with a project. I had expected a simple, polite study session, maybe a few notes, maybe some small talk. I hadn't expected this. Ren's apartment was sleek, almost minimalist, but every detail was deliberate. The soft lighting, the quiet hum of music, the way the space seemed to draw you into it. It felt like stepping into another world. A world where rules didn't quite matter the same way they did outside. Sit, he commanded gently, pointing to a chair across from him. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried weight. The simple word made my pulse quicken. I obeyed without thinking because by now, I trusted that he wouldn't let anything go too far, though a small, irrational part of me feared he might. As I took my seat, he moved closer, leaning casually against the edge of the table. You're tense, he observed, his eyes scanning me like a hawk. Relax. Breathe. Let me guide you. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. There was a strange comfort in the way he framed his dominance, not as a threat, but as a protective force. And yet, the anticipation, the subtle thrill of not knowing exactly what would happen next, made my stomach twist. Close your eyes, he instructed softly. I hesitated, a shiver of uncertainty running through me. My mind screamed caution. My instincts, the ones I had always trusted, told me to step back, to protect myself. I didn't. I trusted him. Or at least I was starting to. I closed my eyes and let him lead. The first touch was almost imperceptible, his fingers brushing against my shoulder, but it sent a ripple through me that I couldn't ignore. The combination of anticipation and nervous energy made my skin feel hypersensitive, as if every nerve ending had come alive at once. Breathe, Kaito, he whispered. Let the tension go. Feel, don't think. I obeyed, and the moment I did, a thrill unlike anything I had ever known washed over me. The fear was still there, tight and sharp in my chest, but it intertwined with something else. Excitement, exhilaration, a deepening sense of trust. It was strange to admit, but the way he controlled the space, the atmosphere, my own reactions, it was addictive. He guided me carefully, never rushing, never breaking the fragile line between fear and thrill. His hands were firm but gentle, his eyes always watching, reading me. Tell me what you feel, he murmured, leaning closer. I struggled to find words. My mind was a jumble, a storm of sensation and emotion. It's overwhelming, I admitted, voice shaking. Good, he said softly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. That's the point. You're learning to trust, Kaito. You're learning to let go. And I was. Step by step, touch by touch, I began to surrender, not out of fear, not out of coercion, but out of a strange, growing desire to experience everything he offered. The thrill of control, the pulse of anticipation, the sharp edges of tension, it all combined into a sensation that was both terrifying and intoxicating. As the evening progressed, he guided me further, testing my limits in ways that were thrilling but never cruel. A hand on my knee that lingered a heartbeat too long. A whispered suggestion to move in a certain way. A gaze that pinned me in place, making it impossible to look away. Each moment pushed me closer to the edge of surrender, and each time, I felt a shiver of panic that quickly transformed into exhilaration. What are you thinking? He asked at one point, voice low and deliberate. I don't know, I admitted, heat rising to my cheeks. It's thrilling, I think. But it's scary. He chuckled softly, a sound that vibrated in my chest. That's the point. Fear and excitement often live side by side. The key is learning to embrace both. I realized then that this wasn't just physical. The tension between us, the push and pull of control and surrender, was emotional, intellectual, and deeply personal. Every glance, every word, every touch carried layers of meaning I hadn't expected. And as I let go a little more, I discovered something remarkable. The pain, the uncertainty, the fear, they all heightened the pleasure. It was a paradox I couldn't fully understand, but one I couldn't resist. At one point he leaned back slightly, studying me. "You're doing well," he said softly. "Better than you know. You're learning to trust, to feel, to surrender without losing yourself." I swallowed hard, emotions twisting in my chest. "I don't know if I'm ready," I whispered, though part of me hoped I was. "You are," he replied, his voice calm, almost soothing. "Every time you resist, every time you hesitate, it makes the next step sweeter. That's why we take it slowly, carefully." His carefulness made the intensity bearable. It allowed me to explore parts of myself I had never acknowledged. The thrill of surrender, the exhilaration of being tested, the addictive pull of his dominance. It was all becoming a dangerous, irresistible habit. I found myself craving it, even though part of me still wanted to run. And then, in a quiet, intimate moment, he reached out and gently brushed my hair from my face. "Vulnerability isn't weakness, Kaito," he murmured. "It's trust. It's courage. And you have more of it than you think." My chest tightened at his words. I had never felt seen like that before, not just for how I acted, but for what I felt. The layers of my fear, my desire, my hesitation, all laid bare, acknowledged, even respected. And it made the moments of tension, the delicious push and pull, feel more meaningful. I leaned into him slightly, almost unconsciously, feeling the warmth of his presence. "I think I'm beginning to understand," I admitted, my voice soft. He smiled, his eyes dark with amusement and something deeper, something I couldn't name. "Good. Because this is only the beginning. You'll learn more about yourself, and about desire, than you ever imagined." The night stretched on, a careful dance of control and surrender. Each touch, each command, each whispered word built on the last, layering tension and excitement in a way that was both exhausting and exhilarating. I discovered that I could enjoy the thrill of being guided, the sting of hesitation, the heady pull of submission. It was addictive, dangerous in its intensity, and entirely unlike anything I had ever experienced. When I finally left his apartment, the cool night air hitting my flushed skin, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid anymore, or at least not entirely. Fear was still there, yes, but it had transformed. It had become part of the thrill, part of the excitement, part of the irresistible tension between us. I was learning to trust, to feel, to surrender, and the experience was intoxicating. Ren had opened a door to a world I hadn't known existed, a world where fear and pleasure intertwined, where control and surrender danced together in an addictive rhythm. And I knew deep in my chest that once you had tasted this, you never wanted to go back. It was strange how much had changed in such a short time. Just weeks ago, I had been the careful, obedient Kaito, always following the rules, always keeping myself hidden in the background. And now I was here, standing in Ren's apartment, heart hammering, skin tingling, every nerve alive with anticipation. The fear that had once clenched my chest had transformed into something else entirely, craving, desire. A need I didn't fully understand but couldn't deny. Ren was watching me as he always did, but tonight there was something different in his gaze. A slow, satisfied smile tugged at the corners of his lips. His eyes weren't just assessing me, they were inviting me, challenging me, acknowledging the surrender I had begun to crave. "You've come a long way, Kaito," he said softly, the low timbre of his voice wrapping around me like a warm, irresistible current. "Do you feel it? The thrill? The satisfaction?" I swallowed hard, struggling to catch my breath. "I think so," I whispered. Even saying it aloud made my pulse spike. It's overwhelming. But I want it. I want this. Ren's smile deepened, a mixture of pride and amusement. But that's exactly how it should feel. I had learned a lot since our first encounters. I had resisted, hesitated, stumbled through nervous uncertainty, and yet each step had only drawn me closer to this moment. The point where my desire for him, for his control, for the intoxicating tension between fear and pleasure, could no longer be denied. "Come here," he instructed, and I obeyed without hesitation. It wasn't just obedience anymore. It was craving. I wanted to be near him, to feel his presence, to surrender fully. He guided me gently at first, his hands firm but careful, leading me to the center of the room. The air was charged, heavy with anticipation. I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my ears, in every fingertip. The mixture of excitement and fear made my skin tingle, and I realized with a jolt that I was no longer resisting. I didn't want to. "Close your eyes," he whispered, and I did. The world faded away, leaving only the sound of his voice, the warmth of his hands, the tension that coiled between us like a living thing. His touch was deliberate, measured, testing the limits we had explored together before. Every brush of his fingers against my skin, every guiding hand, every firm but gentle command sent shivers through me. The strange, intoxicating mix of pain and pleasure, the slight sting of his dominance, the heat of anticipation, made me tremble. And I realized, in a rush of clarity, that this was exactly what I had been craving. The total surrender of myself, the trust, the thrill. "You're doing well," Ren murmured, his lips brushing near my ear. "You've learned to let go, to embrace the tension, the excitement, the control. You're mine to guide, and I promise you're safe. Trust me completely." I nodded, unable to speak, my throat too tight with emotion. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a mix of relief, trust, and desire. I was letting go, fully, without hesitation, without fear of judgment. And it was exhilarating. Ren's hands moved with precision, testing boundaries carefully. The moments of sharp tension, of subtle discomfort, only heightened the pleasure. I felt alive in a way I had never known. Each sensation, each command, each whisper, built upon the last, layering intensity and intimacy until it became almost unbearable. And yet, I didn't want it to end. "You trust me?" he asked softly, his gaze meeting mine even though my eyes were closed. "Yes," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I trust you. That's all I need," he said, and the words wrapped around me like a promise. For the first time, I understood the addictive nature of our dynamic. The fear, the anticipation, the thrill, it wasn't just about control. It was about connection, about the deep, electric intimacy that came from surrendering to someone who respected and cared for you, who pushed you to your limits while ensuring you could always find safety in his presence. Ren leaned closer, his hands guiding me gently, and I felt my breath catch. The combination of tension, desire, and trust sent a thrill rushing through me that made my knees weak. I realized with a shiver that the pain, the sharp edges of anticipation, the sting of slight resistance, was inseparable from the pleasure. They were two sides of the same coin, each enhancing the other, creating a sensation that was entirely consuming. "You're incredible," he murmured, his hands lingering for a moment longer. "The way you surrender, the way you trust, it's intoxicating. I could lose myself in this forever." I swallowed, my chest tight with emotion. "I feel the same. I've never felt anything like this." Ren's smile softened, the teasing edge giving way to something warmer, more intimate. "Then let's take it further," he whispered. "Let's explore every part of this connection, together." And I did. I surrendered fully, letting him guide me, testing boundaries, exploring limits we had never crossed before. Each moment was a dance of dominance and submission, trust and desire, fear and pleasure. Every touch, every command, every glance deepened the connection between us. The tension that had once been frightening was now exhilarating, and the thrill of total surrender was addictive. At one point, he held me close, his hands steady on my shoulders, his gaze unwavering. "Do you understand now?" he asked softly. "The balance between control and surrender, fear and excitement? It's not just physical. It's emotional. It's about trust. About knowing that you can give yourself completely and still be safe." I nodded, overwhelmed by emotion. "I understand," I whispered. "I want this. I want you." Ren's eyes darkened with satisfaction and something more profound, something tender. "And I want you, Kaito. Every part of you. The fear, the desire, the thrill. Everything." That night, as we explored the balance of power and intimacy, I realized that our connection was more than a game, more than a test of limits. It was a bond, electric and consuming, built on trust, desire, and mutual understanding. The fear that had once held me back had transformed into excitement. The anticipation of his control was no longer frightening, it was intoxicating. And the pleasure of surrendering fully, of allowing him to guide me completely, was addictive in every sense of the word. By the time the night ended, I was trembling, exhausted, and utterly exhilarated. I had given myself to him completely, and in doing so, I had discovered a side of myself I had never known. A side that craved trust, intensity, and connection in ways I hadn't imagined. Ren held me close, his hands steady, his gaze soft. "You've done beautifully tonight, Kaito. I'm proud of you." I leaned into him, letting my forehead rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you," I whispered. For everything." He smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of my head. "This is only the beginning. There's so much more to explore together." And in that moment, I understood. The thrill, the tension, the addictive pull between us. It wasn't just about dominance and submission. It was about connection, desire, and trust. It was about surrendering completely, not out of fear, but out of longing. And it was the most exhilarating, satisfying feeling I had ever known. As I drifted into sleep that night, wrapped in his embrace, I realized that I had crossed a threshold. I was no longer just Kaito, cautious and obedient. I was someone who could crave, who could surrender, who could trust completely, and I would never look back. Ren had opened a door to a world of intensity, desire, and connection, and I was ready to step through it, willingly, completely, and endlessly.